Good morning, everybody. My name's Sowell, and I get to be one of the pastors on our team here. And a couple years ago, I made a decision. I've only made this decision a couple times in my adult life, but I made the decision, it was a necessary one, to join a gym. Anybody a gym member out there? You'd be proud? Yeah. Notice I didn't say gym attender. I said gym member. So this is your moment. And I've been a member of a gym for several different types of gyms, I should say, throughout my adult life, kind of different varieties. And most of them have been the kind of gym where you go and you kind of get your cardio in, you get your lift in, you go home and everything's great. And those have absolutely served a great purpose in my life. But I knew a couple of years ago, some things health and fitness-wise had gone a little sideways on me, and I needed something with a little more intensity, a little more accountability, and I was absolutely terrified all at the same time. But I remember going and kind of participating in my first workout, and it was one of these gyms where there's a group fitness component, and you have a coach that's kind of encouraging throughout the deal, and everybody's doing the same workout together. And I show up day one, and there's a whiteboard in front of the room, and there's all these different exercises written on it that's kind of the prescribed workout for the day. And there's a couple of friends of mine, we're kind of looking at it, and we're kind of checking it out together. And it said things like, all right, you gotta do so many push-ups, so many sit-ups, so many pull-ups. And the guys around me are like, yeah, got it, let's go, let's do this. And I'm thinking, don't got it. I don't know how this is gonna go. And I got to about halfway down of the workout, and there was this exercise that I'd never seen before. I never heard of it before, didn't know what it was referring to. And so I elbowed a guy next to me, and I said, hey, when we get to that part, what do you do? What's that mean? And he goes, oh, that's simple. You just go outside and walk a lap. I said, praise God, So you're gonna tell me I can do all this high intensity cardio stuff, then I get to go outside and just walk a lap around the building? This is amazing. He goes, no. At this gym, you don't just walk a lap, and you don't just walk a lap empty-handed. You walk a lap carrying one of these. And this, my friend, is a 40-pound kettlebell. So I don't know if you've ever been in the same room as a kettlebell, but 2 years ago, I had not. It was an absolutely foreign object to me, and I learned quickly that day kind of what became my new mantra for fitness in life, and that is it's all fun and games until someone hands you a kettlebell. That's just the way it's gonna work. But what's interesting to me is that regardless if you've ever been a member of a gym before, regardless if you have a history of fitness in your life, every single one of us knows what it's like to carry something heavy. And I'm not talking about physically. Every one of us in this room, watching online, down in the theater, all of us, myself included, you walked in here today carrying something that's weighing down your soul. If you're a young parent like me, you woke up at 7 a.m. this morning, you were already tired. That's heavy. Fatigue is a heavy thing that we carry. You may be a college student in the room, and you're uncertain about your future. Hey, should I change my major? Should I not? I've already changed it twice. Is it weird to change it a third time? I don't know if this is the career for me. Grad school, what do I do? That uncertainty, that's heavy. Maybe you're a professional in the room and your responsibilities at work impact your company's bottom line greatly. And the amount of responsibility you have to come through every single day, it's weighing on you. Maybe you've got some tension in your family right now, and somebody's not talking to somebody, or you're not talking to somebody, and there's stress that rises in you when someone walks in the room. Or it could be a child that's going through anxiety or depression, any mental health issue, and you don't know what to do about it. That's heavy. And we all know this one. If you've lost something or someone that you love recently, grief is heavy. And so what I want to suggest to you this morning and to myself is the things that you deal with in life aren't just things, they're heavy things. Because our temptation is that when we bump up against something heavy, our temptation is just to treat it as another thing, don't we? And we even say it like, it's just something I've got to get over. It's something I've got to figure out. It's something I've got to plow through. When this thing is over, I'll feel better. And the temptation that we all feel is that, oh, it's just something I've got to get through. No, the things that you are carrying, the things that you bump up, the things that you deal with in life aren't just things, they're heavy things. And so a question that I want to ask all of us today to kind of give us some direction of where we're going this morning is, what do you do with the heaviness in life? Because, hey, we've all got it. We've all got heavy things that we're carrying. Our soul is being weighed down by something. That fatigue, that uncertainty, that responsibility, that grief, that loss. Life in general, it's like a 40-pound kettlebell that your soul is trying to carry right now. So what do you do with it? All of us have either asked that question or we will ask that question. Because all of us are looking for a solution to that. Last week, we introduced this new framework to kind of look at our lives. John Tyson was here with us last week, and he introduced these 3 different ways to live. And he described them this way. He said there's the way of the world, there's the way of religion, and there's the way of Jesus. And if you missed last week, I highly recommend you go back and look on our YouTube channel or download the podcast on our app. Because what John introduced to us are essentially, as you continue to live in your life, there's gonna be 3 different ways you can choose to respond to life. And so if you missed last week, what I wanna do is give us some definitions on, hey, when we say way of the world, for the rest of this series, what do we mean? When we say way of religion, what are we talking about? And then our series is called Way of Jesus. So what does that mean? So we're gonna put these up on the screen. The way of the world, when we say that, it's the culture and practices without God. It's the way to live, it's the way to think, it's the way to act without God in the equation. That's what the way of the world is. It removes God completely from any thought, action, or behavior that we have. The way of religion is the culture and practices, the accepted way of doing things that distort God. So this is interesting because the way of the world removes God from the equation. God is in the equation when it comes to the way of religion, but it's a distorted view of God. It's a distorted idea of God. And then lastly, the way of Jesus is the culture and practices that glorify God. And I just want to be really clear. In this series, what we're trying to do is we're trying to give all of us some helpful things to help you either take steps towards the way of Jesus or in the way of Jesus, because we believe that that's the best way to live. But on the flip side of that, I also want to be really clear. In no way is this series intended to make any one of us, myself included, feel guilty or shame for ever choosing the way of the world or ever choosing the way of religion, because as we're going to see in a second, those ways are really enticing and really attractive. So this series isn't meant to bash anyone or to make anyone feel guilty for choosing that. It's just to say, hey, here are the 3 ways to live. We think this one's the best way. We want you to be able to recognize all 3, especially when life hands you something heavy to carry in your soul. How do you respond? And how do you recognize how the different ways are encouraging you to respond? Make sense? All right. So let's start with the way of the world. In response to the heaviness in life, when life hands you something heavy, the way of the world is really simple. The way of the world is to escape. It's to escape. Now, doesn't that just sound awesome, by the way? You're telling me I can run away from the heavy things in my soul? I can escape? There's a way, you're telling me, world, that I can get away from the stuff that's weighing me down through escape? And see, the reason why that's so attractive and enticing for all of us is the world knows that all of us are looking for the same solution to the heaviness. We're all looking for relief. We are all looking for something to give us relief from the heavy things that are weighing down our soul. We are. And there's so many different directions we could go with this, and we could spend a whole lot of time talking about when it comes to escape. But I think there's 2 primary categories of escape that the world presents to you and I that are really attractive. The first category of escape is what we call physical escape. This is literally you physically going somewhere else in effort to leave your heaviness behind. This is you physically trying to get away from the stuff that you're carrying in efforts to find some relief. And I'm just gonna be really honest with you. This is my favorite way of escape. Because my favorite escape has a name, and its name is St. Simon's Island, Georgia, everybody. I mean, look at that. Full disclosure, I'm going there next week. I've already planned out where I'm gonna eat. Vacation is about food for me. It's another form of escape that I really enjoy. But hey, we all do this. We all have a physical place. Hey, it might not be vacation, it might be somewhere else. But what we believe on the way to escaping our heaviness physically is we believe that somewhere along the way, we're gonna get to leave our heaviness behind. It's like for me, when I go to St. Simon's, if I'm going across the bridge and I'm going down King's Way with those oak trees and I start to feel that relief, it's like, all right, heaviness, I'll see you in Brunswick. I'll see you in a couple days. You know, I'm like leaving it back there. That's not happening. You know that's not true. But the world is really good at selling you that. We know this. Hey, when the world entices you to say, hey, follow in my way, you need to escape the heaviness and you need to get away because that's gonna bring you relief. What you and I know is as much relief as it brings us, there is an end date to that relief. There's actually a day on the calendar when that relief is gonna stop. But I think there's a more kind of pervasive category of relief that we all deal with, and we're all tempted with this, and that's the mental escape. The mental escape. This idea kind of is illustrated really well, I think, through this. A couple of months ago, I was listening to a podcast, and this podcast guy that I follow, he was interviewing this young lady who's 17 years old, and he was asking her about just teenage culture right now. Hey, what are you into? What are your friends into? Your generation? What are you watching? What are you listening to? It was really fascinating, but one category they talked a lot about was TikTok, this social media platform. And he said, hey, what's your favorite follow on TikTok? 17-year-old girl. And she didn't say anybody famous. She didn't say anybody in her own age bracket. She didn't say any of her friends. She said the favorite follow, the person that I look forward to the most watching their content on TikTok is this woman in her 30s who all she does is cook meals in her house. And he said, so is it a cooking show? Why do you watch this woman cook meals? And she goes, no, she doesn't even talk in the video. She just puts these ingredients out there, she puts the meal together, and voila, there it is, and it's beautiful. He goes, why as a 17-year-old girl is that so attractive that it's your number one follow on TikTok? And she said, well, I don't have my life together. None of my friends have our life together. And so she seems like she has her life together, so we can log on to TikTok and take a little brain vacation for a second, away from my life. And that phrase just stuck with me ever since. Because maybe for you, the escape isn't a physical escape. Maybe it's a mental escape. Maybe it's a brain vacation that you're taking every day. It could be social media, or it could be something a little bit deeper. It could be pornography. Could be alcohol, could be a substance, but you're doing something, you're following in the way of the world saying, hey, if you do this, take this, watch this, you're gonna give yourself relief from all this heaviness. But we know this, just like the physical escape, the mental escape, the relief wears off. It's going to let you down eventually. And then what ends up happening is your desire to find relief, it actually leads you down a path over time towards a version of outer destruction. Because what happens in your behavior is all of a sudden there's addiction in your life. There's something you can't put down. There's something you can't stop. And maybe that addiction began as an escape. There's debt in your life. Maybe that debt began because there was an attempt to find relief through escape somewhere. Maybe there's an inability you have to feel content in life because you're always chasing the next experience. And that started as just a desire for relief. And the world says, find relief through escape. And you're living in that cycle. And the best way to describe that cycle for me, and I bet for a lot of us today, is actually a lyric from a song I heard a few years ago by a singer-songwriter named Judah Akers. And he was writing the song and he was trying to describe when it comes to the stress in life, when it comes to the heaviness in life, he said, this is why I hydrate, caffeinate, medicate, repeat. He said, day to day in my life, in response to all the stress, the chaos, the heaviness, this is why I hydrate, caffeinate, medicate, repeat. And there have absolutely been seasons of my life where that described me day in, day out. Maybe it describes you. If that's the case, that's a way you can recognize the way of the world right now. What about religion? What about the way of the religion? In the face of all the heaviness that you have, the way of religion is encouraging you to hide your heaviness. Because here's how religion works. For religion's everything's got to be fine all the time, doesn't it? Religion is based on outward appearances and transactional agreements. If I can be good enough, if I can check enough boxes, if I can modify my behavior enough, then I'll be okay. And I can have relief from whatever's weighing me down or whatever issue I have in my life. But if you've ever followed down this way like I have before, that is so all-consuming. There's no space for heaviness. You can never be authentic with yourself, and you can never be authentic with somebody else. You're spending so much time trying to be good, trying to modify your behavior, trying to be good on the outside so that God will hold up his end of the deal, or other people will think better of you. And so in an effort to hide your heaviness, to find relief, you actually find exhaustion. And if the way of the world leads to an outer form of destruction with behaviors and addiction and all this things we mentioned a few moments ago, the way of religion leads to a form of inner destruction. Leads to anger, leads to bitterness, leads to hypocrisy. Because when you follow in the way of religion like I have before, you start to look around and you go, why is nobody trying as hard as I am? And all of a sudden, you're so angry at everyone and you're angry at yourself. So here we have two ways to live. The way of the world, the way of religion. Both of them promise you relief. Both of them promise you a response to the heavy things that you're carrying in your soul right now. But here's what I think is true about you and me. That relief sounds good, but I think your soul and my soul want something deeper than relief. There's something better than relief out there. And that's what your soul craves and my soul craves. And I'm telling you, friends, the way of Jesus can deliver that to you. So what is it? What is the way of Jesus in the face of all the heaviness that we encounter in life? What is the way that Jesus would encourage us to go? And we find it in Matthew's gospel. I want to read it to you. We'll have the words on the screen. You can turn to Matthew chapter 11 if you want. Just a little reminder, Matthew was a disciple of Christ. He was an apostle, an eyewitness to all of Jesus' teachings. And he documented this teaching one day of Jesus telling his disciples and the crowd following him, hey, if you want to follow me, I got news for you. When you follow me, you get some things from me. But there's a very specific way you've got to access those things. There's a very specific way of me, a way of my life that gives you access to everything I want to give you. And it comes to us in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Let me read it for us. Jesus says to all of us, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The way of Jesus in response to everything you're carrying in your soul right now is not to escape it. He doesn't want you to do that. It's not to hide it either. He doesn't want you to hide it from him. The way of Jesus is to surrender. Surrender. You hear that passage and you go, okay, Stephen, I heard a lot of things in there, some things that sound good, some things I like, but I didn't hear the word surrender. How does that work? Here's the deal. Jesus says this phrase, take my yoke upon you, right? Scholars tell us that was Jesus' way of saying, hey, take my way of life upon you. Take the thing that I want to hand you upon you. Follow in my way. Here's the deal. You can't take what Jesus offers you until you put down what you're carrying. Your hands are full. Your soul is full. You can't take what Jesus wants to give you if you're not gonna put down what you're trying to carry in your own strength first. So the way of Jesus is surrender. Now, when you hear that, there's a bunch of different ways we can respond. We hear the way of Jesus is surrender. Okay, so first, one response might be, I don't know. I don't know if surrender's worth it. I don't know if it's worth all the trouble. And that's actually a way that I think the world is that's a thought that I think the world's kind of cooked into our thinking. Because in the way of the world, you are the center of your own universe. Yourself is in charge. And so if you are in the way of the world, or if you follow the way of the world, then to think about surrender is to go, I just don't think it's worth it. Because I don't think that if I surrender or give up my life or give up the things I'm trying to carry, I don't think that on the other side, I'm gonna get what I want. I don't think it's worth it. That's valid. That might be your response today. Another way to respond is maybe you think surrender is a form of weakness. And this is something I think that the way of religion has kind of led us to believe is that, hey, in your own power, you can be good enough. You can do enough religious activity and check enough boxes. You can achieve goodness on your own. And if you admit that you can't, then you're just being weak. Maybe that's your response today. Maybe that's how you kind of associate, or the thoughts or feelings you associate with surrender. And then lastly, I think for a lot of us, surrender sounds good, and it's something we even might want to try, but we think that once we surrender, we don't know what to do next. There's a lot of uncertainty on the other side of surrender, so why would I even surrender what's uncertain in my life? I don't even know what to do after that. And there's just confusion around it. And what I want to tell you today, surrender isn't the end. It isn't the final thing that you do in the way of Jesus. It's the beginning. Because Jesus just told you, your Savior just told you, I want to give you the very things that your soul craves. If you'll surrender it to me, you'll find that on the other side, I'm so much more and so much better than what you're trying to do on your own. So what I want to do for the next few minutes is I want to try to make the compelling case for surrender when it comes to the way of Jesus. So number one, what do you get on the other side of surrender? When you surrender to Jesus, what happens? What do you get from him? The first thing you get is gentleness. Gentleness. Jesus says, take my yoke, take the way of life that I'm living out in this world for you to follow, take my teaching upon you, and then in response, I'm gonna be gentle with you. The gentleness of Jesus, if I could summarize it, I think it's Jesus seeing you and me in our chaos, where chaos is around us and chaos is in us, and he sees us for who we are, and he says, I don't care, I know it's crazy, I know it's chaotic, I know it's heavy, but you can trust me, give it to me anyway. There's a story from Luke chapter 8 where Jesus displayed this very idea. In Luke chapter 8, this woman, she is healed of a medical issue that she'd had for 12 years, and the story goes that she was trying to get through the crowd to Jesus, and she only could really grab the edge of his robe. And that power went through Jesus and healed her in that moment. But if you read that story, right before the healing account, the gospel writer Luke, he describes the scene of that healing as utter chaos, to the point where he says that the crowd was so big, they were pressing and crushing in on Jesus. And so you have this woman who's got chaos going on inside her, something heavy she's carried for a long time, and her outer environment is also crazy, chaotic, and heavy. And the gentleness of Jesus in that moment is he stopped moving, looked her in the eye, gave her dignity, healed her, and made her whole again. That's what Jesus wants to do with you. He wants to deal with you in gentleness. But you don't just get gentleness, you get something else. You get his humility. He says, take my yoke upon you. I am gentle and I'm humble in heart. So what does that mean? The humility of Jesus is he gives you space to be broken. You don't have to clean yourself up first, then come to Jesus. The humility of Jesus is, I see you in your brokenness and I love you anyway. I know that you can't do it on your own. I know you're way down by all this. I see that you're broken, and guess what? I love you anyway, I accept you anyway, and I wanna make you whole again. That's the humility of Jesus. Isn't it interesting that the things Jesus wants to give us, gentleness and humility, are the exact opposite of how the world treats us and how religion treats us? Because the world puts you in the center, puts you in charge, and says, hey, come escape, get away from your heaviness, get away from the things that are weighing you down. But if you do it wrong, if the vacation didn't satisfy, if the brain vacation didn't satisfy, then hey, that's on you. And now you gotta figure this out. You just did it wrong. And maybe some of us have gotten in trouble because of our escapes. And the world is going, hey, that's on you, man. You did that. Yeah, I know I enticed you and I was attractive and I said, hey, come get away, get relief, escape. But hey, you messed up and that's on you. The world deals with you on the other side of escape. The world deals with you harshly. Jesus deals with you gently. And then in religion, if we can't handle it and if we mess up, then there's all these religious people and there's the kind of the spirit, the way of religion going, hey, that's on you too. And you're the problem. And so the way of religion on the other side of trying to hide your heaviness, if you can't hide it well enough, you experience arrogance and pride. And Jesus says, not me. I'm humble in heart. I see that you're broken and I love you anyway, and I'm gonna be the one that makes you whole. But the last thing that Jesus gives us on the other side of surrender is absolutely the thing our soul craves. He gives you rest. Rest is better than relief. It's deeper than relief. But here's the thing about rest I find that's really interesting for all of us. For some reason, we have chosen to believe, myself included, that for me to rest, for me to fully relax and be okay, then I've got to change my circumstances. In order for the heavy thing to be gone and to evaporate and to vanish, whatever it is, I've got to change my circumstances. So it might be your setting, like you want a physical escape. It might be a person that you're trying to change. Could be a career, could be anything, but we believe that true rest is only gonna happen when my circumstances change. And Jesus says, no, not in my way. Rest doesn't mean your circumstances are going to change. It means your faith is now in the one bigger than your circumstances. That's the rest in the way of Jesus. That's the type of rest we find when we surrender. Because hey, we all know that thing that your soul is trying to carry right now, you either have already gotten to the point or you're getting to the point eventually where it's just gonna be too heavy and you need someone stronger than you to carry it. I experienced this very thing on a personal level just a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, it was a Saturday morning and I had just finished making breakfast for the girls and I'd cleaned up the kitchen. And after I cleaned up the kitchen, I wiped down the counters. And after I wiped down the counters, I wiped down the table. And after I did that, I started vacuuming and I started moving from room to room. And Amanda's like, hey, are you okay? And I said, yeah, why? Why wouldn't I be? And she said, well, Exhibit A, you're cleaning the house. Exhibit B, it's 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Are you sure you're okay? And as I thought about that and I processed that for a second, I realized that in my soul, I was carrying the heaviness of anxiety for a lot of different reasons, for a variety of reasons. But I recognized, oh man, I'm trying to carry this weight of anxiety in my soul right now. And the escape that I went to was tasks, which is really dangerous because when we throw ourselves into task, it's a combo of physical and mental escape. And so when there was no more task, I just created one. And so in that moment, as I started processing that, I felt a few things. I felt embarrassed that I had anxiety. I felt shame that I tried to carry it on my own for a long period of time. And as I felt the need to surrender that, as I got to the point where I finally was able to surrender that to the Lord, what I experienced on the other side of that was Jesus saying, hey, I know it's heavy. I know it feels chaotic, but you can trust me. I'm strong enough. Just give it to me. You don't have to be embarrassed. I've seen you the whole time. I'll take it. Just give it to me. And hey, you don't need to feel shame because you carried this for so long or tried to carry it for so long. You can be broken, and I love you anyway. And I'm gonna give you space to be broken, and I'm gonna make you whole again. And then through all of that, I was able to enter into his rest going, all right, my circumstances didn't change, but now my perspective is reoriented to see that my faith is in the one who's bigger than my circumstances. So, how do you do it? How do you access the way of Jesus through surrender? What steps do you get to either take steps towards it or through it or in it? And the first one may be where I was a couple weeks ago, is you just need to have a moment of recognition. So the first thing when it comes to the way of Jesus as surrender is you need to recognize some things in your soul, in your life. Today, there's a few different steps that might be. One is that you might need to recognize which way are you following? Which way are you choosing to respond to the heavy stuff in your life? You need to recognize that. Secondly, you need to recognize that the weight is real. The thing that you're carrying is not just a thing, it's a heavy thing. And then be specific with this question, what do you need to let go of? What is that thing or multiple things that are heavy that you need to let go of? And once you recognize all that, you can just simply release it to the Lord. You can surrender it to Jesus, and in surrendering it to him and releasing it to him, this is just a very simple prayer that I use oftentimes, and a lot of times I'll even pray with my hands open like this, just to remind me what I'm doing. You say, Lord, I give you fill in the blank. A couple weeks ago it was, Lord, I give you my anxiety. And then the last thing on the other side of recognizing and releasing, maybe something that we skip past a lot is that we need to receive from him as well. It's not just understanding what's on the other side of surrender, it's grabbing a hold of it and holding it in your soul as well and receiving it. And so maybe for you on the other side of surrender this morning is you need to just tell the Lord, say, Lord, I receive your gentleness, your humility, and your rest. So you hear all that, and you say, I don't know, Stephen. How can I really trust that Jesus is strong enough to carry the heavy stuff in my life? How can I really trust him? Well, I got some good news for you. Jesus already carried the heaviest thing in the world for you. It's your sin and my sin to the cross. And through his death and resurrection, he gives you and I access into a new way of life, into his way, the way of Jesus. And so maybe today the weight that you're carrying is the weight of sin, and you've never surrendered your life to him. And that's what you can put down today. That's what you can surrender. Still, there's others of us that have actually tried this before, and you say, hey, I tried to give this up before and it didn't work. Hey, I prayed, I asked God to take it away. I surrendered the grief, I surrendered the uncertainty, I surrendered the loss, I surrendered the anxiety, I surrendered the addiction, I surrendered it, and hey, it didn't go anywhere, it was still there. But here's the thing about surrender. In the way of Jesus, when you put that thing down, it's still there. It's still there, it's still around, it's still in your view, it's still maybe in your life. It's just not yours to carry anymore. Oh, it's still there. It might still be there for a while, but it's not yours to pick up anymore. Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary, I'll give you rest. For I am gentle and I am humble in my heart. And in me is where you can find rest for your soul. We're gonna give you a chance to respond. We're gonna sing just a simple song that we've sung around here for a while and you might recognize, but there's a line in this song I want you to focus on. The line says, with my life laid down, I surrender now, I give you everything. And maybe that's the phrase you need to kind of give some words to what you're feeling right now. You need to process that. The way of the world is to escape. The way of religion is to hide, but the way of Jesus is to surrender and to gain access into the greatest life any of us could ever imagine. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you so much for the gift of surrender. Thank you that on the other side of surrender is your gentleness and your humility and your rest. Thank you that when we actually come to you and lay down what we're carrying, that we can trust that you're gonna be strong enough to pick it up. You've already carried our sin to the cross. And so I pray that all of us, that today would be a moment where we pause and we recognize what's going on inside of us, that we release it to you. We just receive you on the other side. It's in the strong and powerful name of Jesus I pray. Amen.